says we got a decent way on Amud Aleph to the first two dots, which is like 10 lines down. The Mishnah said that we were talking about a case of a child who grows up but does not achieve signs of sexual maturity. So a man is a suris or a woman's an islandit. The question was what age, right? How do you know if they're just a late developer or if they are not, or they're infertile? So like obviously 13 or 12, you don't really know for a little bit of time. For how long do you know? So the Mishnah said it doesn't matter. If you're up to 20 and you don't have the simanim, then you're still in that category of a boy who's 9 or 10. Ask the Gemara today, Veramin. The contradiction from another Braita, actually this is a Nida, where it says Ben Esrim Shana, person who reaches the age of 20. He doesn't have two sarot, so he doesn't have any signs of sexual maturity. Says the Mishnah, Yaviu Raya Shehu Ben Esrim. He's got to prove he's 20, right? Obviously, it's hard to prove that. Get his mother testify when he was born, right? So you got to prove that you're 20. Show your passport, your birth certificate, actually. The Hu Asaris, that's considered to be a saris because you're 20 and don't have any sexual signs of sexual maturity. The person is a saris, and then if that person was married or his brother was married, lo chalitz lo miyabim, he doesn't fall into the parish of chalitza and yibam. The same thing is true about a woman. Bat esrim shana shelo avia shtei sarot. If she's 20 and she doesn't have shtei sarot, yaviu raya she bat esrim, to prove at least that she's 20, and then she's the person we describe as an islandit, and therefore, as we said before, since yibam is connected to having a child, they're not choletz lo mityabemet, the choletz lo mityabemet. So that seems to go against our Mishnah, which implies that there's no age, that as long as you don't show simanim, the Mishnah didn't say, anything about 20. Says, you're right, but in Nida, we explained, ha'itmar alam, Shmuel bar Yitzchak, Amar Rav, it's not enough to just be 20 and not have shtei sarot. You also have to have other signs that are consistent with being a saris. The Gemara in Nida goes through what those signs are. That for a man, sort of signs of the no hair on the skin, things that are signs of secondary signs of puberty, right? So he doesn't have hair on the skin and things like that. And for a woman also, she didn't have breast development. There's other signs that the person is a saris, but not if they're just 20. That's not enough. Ask the Gemara now, what if they have no simanei saris? Ad kama. So what age, again, the person is it's unclear, are they going to mature or not? You're saying 20 is not enough. What if they're 30? What if they're 50, right? Do you say that we still don't know if this person's a child, right? So again, there's categories. You can be a child, meaning you didn't have sexual maturity yet, or you can be an adult who's a saritz, right? But this person's 25 years old. How could you still call him a suffix as a child, right? What age? Says Rabbi Chia, Tani Rabbi Chia, Adrov Shnotav, until the majority of a person's life. This is an interesting statement. Pasuk in Tehillim, of course, says Yimei Shnotav Shel Adam are 70 years. And so until the age of 35. So if a person really has no other signs that are suggesting that they are not developing sexually the way a regular or usual male or female does, then you don't know what category they are. You don't know if they're just a very late developer or if they are an adult and they are a saris or an islandit, and you have to wait till age 35, which I assume is very uncommon. Up the Kamei to Rava, now when they came to Rava, this implies that they brought people in front of Rava. So they brought people and they said, we don't know what to do with this person. They haven't had signs of maturity, of sexual maturity. They're 15, they're 20, they're 25. How do we treat them? He would say, if they were very weak or thin, Amarli would say, Zilu Avrui, go fatten them up. Because, there are times where a person who's malnourished, obviously this is very well known, unfortunately. Places where people are malnourished, they don't develop sexual characteristics because they don't have hormonal changes. So it could be that the person's regular, they just didn't have the ability to develop. V bari, but if the person's very generous, I'll say, they're very large, Amarlo zilak kusho, might be that they're obese, and that that's interfering with the hormonal development. And if they lost a little weight, they would have normal signs of puberty. And so you have to do that before you can establish what they are. Says Rava, quoting Rava, Nahani simanim, these signs, right? The signs again, mainly shtei sarot, but there's other signs, secondary signs of sexual maturity. Those zimnim dinatri machmat kichishuta. Sometimes they come out, they fall out, or they don't show because a person's too weak. Zimnim dinatri machmat biyuta, and sometimes they don't show because a person's too healthy, let's say. But obviously, healthy means overweight. So hadron alacha yisharaba, and therefore you have to worry about the health also of these people. Continues a new parak, almost near the end now, not quite, but getting close. Says the Mishnah, the new parak, what about, and now this is actually, it synthesizes things we've discussed earlier, but we've discussed obviously through this whole Masechet, all the arayot, right, who's prohibited. If you recall, most relations, well, not most, some relations are prohibited because a person has a relationship or is related to another person, right? But some have only to do with marriage. And this Mishnah gets to those. Nosin says the Mishnah, you can marry a relative of a woman who is anusa mifuta, a woman who someone had a relationship with outside of marriage. We use the word anusa, rape if it's unwilling, mifuta if she's willing. But obviously we discussed earlier, anusa doesn't just mean what we would classically say rape, it would be other conditions where you did it under duress, right? Where, for example, if a person thought they were not married because someone went medinat hayam, we call that anusa. Right. So again, they had a sexual relationship. They didn't know it was prohibited, or they didn't want it to do it. So, anyways, in those cases, a man sleeps with a woman outside of marriage, then he doesn't become prohibited to her relatives, her mother or her sister, or those relatives. It's only if someone's married to a woman, he's also to her mother and her sister. But if he just sleeps with her, he can then later marry her mother or sister. Right. But the opposite is not true. If a person marries a woman, he cannot then, and if he does then sleep, even through rape or through mefuta, with her mother or her sister, that's an isur doraita, and he'd be punished. So ha'ones mefata al hanisua, she was married to a woman, and then he has intercourse with her relative through ones or mefata, even without marrying them, quote unquote, because obviously marriage wouldn't be chal in that case. He's chayav. And says our Mishnah, and this is something we discussed in detail before and earlier in the Masechet, in the first Mishnah. No, say Adam anusat aviv mufadat aviv. This also applies to a person's father. So obviously, the Torah says you can't marry your father's wife, you can't marry your mother, but you can marry your father's wife. But if a father slept with a woman outside of marriage, a person's allowed to marry or sleep with that woman. And the same thing is true about a child. Anusat pino mufadat pino. And Rabbi Yehuda says, and this is a famous statement of Rabbi Yehuda, which we had before, Oser banusat aviv mufadat aviv. Yehuda disagrees with that one case, where if a person's father slept with a woman, even though the father did not marry her and never had any kind of relationship that was nisuin, the son is not allowed to sleep or marry that woman, sleep with or marry that woman, and we'll see why in the Gemara.
So like in Ruvain slept with Bilhah or something?
So that it's interesting.
That was like his mother, right?
It wasn't his mother, it was like his father's wife, you're saying.
Yeah, his father's wife.
Yeah, so I guess so the question is, if it's his father's wife, it's for sure prohibited, right? Obviously, this was before Matan Torah.
Right, but
you're saying if you characterize it as not a father's wife, but as a father's anusa, right? If you say that he wasn't really married to the shvachot, because they were.
No, let's say he was. No.
Well, then for sure it's prohibited. It's Eshadal.
Right. So
the question would be, if it wasn't a marriage, and it was just anusat aviv, mufutat aviv, would Ruvain be prohibited? It would be machloket in our Mishnah.
Prohibited from what?
Sleeping with her.
Oh, okay. When it says chayav, what does that mean? Chayav.
Well, you're chayav the Torah. So it depends on the prohibition. You're chayav karet. You're chayav yeah. Depending on what the isur is. Yeah. Or maku, right? So it says in Martanim l'hadar Torah, our Mishnah is actually teaching us or teaching us what we learned in a Braita. The Braita actually speaks it out, where it says anas isha. If a woman is raped by a man, or again, marries outside of, sleeps with her. Sorry, it's intercourse outside of marriage. Mutar li sabita. He, the man, is allowed to marry her daughter, because although you're not allowed to marry a woman and her daughter, it's not married to the mother. But if you're nasaisha, if you marry a woman, asur li sabita, then of course you can't marry the daughter. That the Torah says. As the Gemara Varaminu, we have a problem with another Braita. So Braita says, "Hanit'an min ha'isha," person who sleeps with a woman, right? So he's nitan, which means they have a ta'ana, that they know that outside of marriage he had an affair with this woman. Says the Braita, "Asur bi'ima v'bita lachota." You can't then marry her mother, her sister, her daughter. Our Mishnah clearly disagreed with that. Our Mishnah said just sleeping with a woman does not prohibit her relatives. Answers the Gemara, midrabanan. In fact, the Rabbanan came up with a decree. Our Mishnah is Midoraita. Midoraita, there's no prohibition, but the Rabbanan said that you're not allowed to. And why the Rabbanan say you're not allowed to? The reason, main reason, one of the reasons, is because the opposite. Because remember, if you married her, you couldn't then sleep with any relatives, and we're afraid that people will think, oh, you can have a relationship with a woman and her mother as long as you're not married to both, let's say, which is not true, right? It only depends on one direction. If you marry the mother or daughter, you can't then sleep with the relative. But if you sleep with one and then you can then marry the other, they made a takanat rabbanan that you can't do it either way. Ask the Gemara. I don't just get it. Our Mishnah says it's not a problem. And you're telling me there's another brayta which says it's an isur drabanan. But would our Mishnah say that you're allowed to marry her? And the Mishnah says you can do it. You're telling me now you can't do it. You can do it midoraita. Drabanan, you can't do it. How can our Mishnah go out and say you're allowed to do it? And the Mishnah says, you're going to quote our Mishnah, no sin al anusa. You can get married after anusa, right? So how can you say that? Answers the Gemara, you're right, but it's because matnita lachar kitna matnita lachar mita. The Mishnah is referring to where the person that you slept with died. But there's no takanani. Right? Let's say a person sleeps with a woman. She then dies. He can then marry her mother or her sister or her daughter, right? Because there's no prohibition and it's not his relationship. Hold on, excuse me one second. Sorry.
Would we need to be told that? I mean, isn't that obvious?
That you can do it after she dies?
Yeah. No.
Well, no, because remember, midoraita you couldn't, right? So midoraita, if a person marries a woman, let's say, and that woman dies, he can't then marry her daughter or her mother. He can marry her sister, but he can't marry her daughter or her mother.
Only the sister is permitted.
Right, only the sister. Sisters, remember, one big exception. And so the other way, again, we don't know that. So Kamashman, our Mishnah, that you can marry any of her relatives after she dies. Even midrabanan. Midoraita, you can marry them even when she's alive. Now, ask the Ramanani, how do we know this? How do we know that for these relationships, it only has to do with marriage, not with just sleeping with them? It says Tanur Rabbanan. In fact, the Braita explains this whole thing. What does the Braita explain? That Bikulan, whenever the Torah says you can't sleep with someone in Parshat Achimot in Kedoshim, it always says shchiva, right? Ish asher yishkav achot ish, whatever. Achoto is what it says, right? A person can't sleep with his sister or whatever. On and on and on. But by the relations of a wife, it talks about eshet achiv and eshet, not eshet achiv, achot isha and bita or bat isha, mother. It says kich, right? It says don't lo yikach ish at lo yikach ish, right? So when it says kicha, it implies kicha is not sleeping with someone alone; it's actually marrying them. As you said, of course, kicha is the word we use for marriage. But that teaches you that derech likuchin asra Torah, that the only way that Torah prohibits this is when you do it through likuchin. And so it says, for example, and we're going to quote it in a second, ish asher yikach et achoto, which we'll get to that case, right? Because that's another case that's not through wife, that's through relationship, through a sister. But the examples by achot isha, it says isha el achota lo tikach, right? A woman and her sister don't take. So the kicha implies that you have to marry one in order to be prohibited on the other. What about your sister? Which again, achoto is not a marriage relationship, right? A person's sister is through genetics. And there it says, ish asher yikach et achoto, a person who takes his sister, whether it's batimo. So why does it use the word yikach, right? Yikach implies only if you marry her, which obviously makes no sense if you marry, right? That the only prohibition is if you marry a sister, not if you sleep with the sister. It doesn't make any sense. Amarle says, he said back to him, you're right. The language doesn't always make sense. But likuchin k'tiv b'Torah stam. There are times the Torah just says likuchin. If it's possible to mean marriage, or kicha, by, for example, a wife and a sister, a wife's sister and a wife's mother, it's possible to be kicha. But it's ra'oi, the shchiva would be shchiva. But if it's obviously something that can't be interpreted as marriage, like a person's sister, it has to just mean sleeping with them together. Okay, so that's how we know this halacha. Rava Amar, now Rava says the way that we learn this is from somewhere else. Anas isha, a person rapes a woman or sleeps with a woman without marriage, mutar lisab bita mehach. The source that our Mishnah knows that you can marry her daughter, that her daughter doesn't become prohibited, is actually from this pasuk. What does the pasuk say? K'tiv, ervat bat bincha u bat bitcha lo tigala. Right? The Torah says, it's an interesting pasuk. It says a person should not be migaleh, meaning they shouldn't sleep, with the daughter of their son or the daughter of their daughter. Right? Now it says it in his language. Bat bincha means the man's son or the daughter of the man's son or the daughter of the man's daughter, implying that bat bina dida or bat bita dida, if it's his wife's grandson or granddaughter, meaning not his, then it would be gully. Now don't go anywhere yet. We're going to finish the statement. But the implication is ervat bat bincha, which is that only if it's a grandchild from a man's child, but if it's from his wife's child and not his child, of course, right? He can sleep, it implies, with that grandchild, with his wife's granddaughter. But there's another pasuk which says, ervat isha ubita lo tigaleh, that you cannot sleep with a woman and her daughter and not her grandchildren. Bat bina, bat bita lo tikach, right? Don't take, there's no tikach, the wife's granddaughter from the son or the daughter. So how in the world do you explain that? The first pasuk implies that a man cannot marry his granddaughter if it's his granddaughter, but it has to be his, not from marriage. And then the pasuk very explicitly says, don't marry a woman and sleep with her granddaughter, which is through marriage. HaKetzad, says Rava, the way you can explain that contradiction in the psukim is that it depends on whether you married her or didn't marry her. Kam bonsin, kam binisuin. It depends on whether you're married to the grandmother or not. If you just slept with the grandmother, her granddaughter or daughter does not become usher to you. But if you actually married her, then she becomes usher to you. But just to be very clear, if you slept with a woman and had a child together, then that granddaughter would be usher to you from the first pasuk, which says your own granddaughter. But if you slept with her, didn't have a child, or didn't have this child, she had a different child from a different relationship, and that child has a granddaughter, you are permitted, according to this, according to Rava, to that granddaughter. Ask the Gemara, I don't get it. Why don't you switch it around? Say the opposite. That you're prohibited to your wife's grandchildren, but not your own granddaughter. And the logic would be that your wife, you have a relationship with her, and just like we prohibited 2 generations, you can't have 2 generations. It says the Gemara, well, that can't be. Because arayot she'er k'tivnu. It says by arayot the word she'er, which we always use the word she'er to mean a relationship, a connection. And nisuin ikasher b'onsin lekasher. It's impossible that through rape you'd have more of a relationship than you would have through marriage. When you have marriage, you not only you connect, you develop a relationship. So that's where it's more likely to be usher. That's how we derive, according to the 2 interpretations, that it's permitted to sleep or marry with anusat, bat anusato, right? The daughter or granddaughter of someone who you had a relationship with, but not through marriage. As the Gemara continues, the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda oser manusat aviv. Rabbi Yehuda prohibits a person to sleep with the woman who his father raped, even though his father did not marry him. Amar Rav Gido, Amar Rav. My time is Rav Yehuda. How does Rav Yehuda know that? Because there's a very unusual pasuk, which again we quoted way back on Daf Dalet, as you see here. We quoted the pasuk where it says, "Lo yikach ish et eshet aviv." The Torah says, "Don't sleep with your father's wife." Sorry, "Lo yikach ish et eshet aviv." And then it says, "Lo yigale knaf aviv." Don't reveal the skirt, right? The cloth, the dress that your father revealed. What does that mean? What's that adding? What does that mean? Says the Rabbi Yehuda, "Lo knaf shra aviv lo yigale." If a person's father slept with this woman, whether it's marriage or not, you should never be in a relationship with that person. So it says, how do we know that it's referring to a woman that a father raped and not that he married her? So it's because in the Bach here, the Bach in my Gemara, here we go. It says Me'iluye Dikra. It takes out the word dichtiv. From the thing that's written right above it. Because the thing right above that in Kiteitzei is Natana Isha Shochevi Malavia Naracha Mishin Kasem. Right, it's talking about a case of Nara Murasa, a person who's raped when she's a minor, and you have to give the father 50 shekel, and then 50 kasef, and then it says a father lo yikach et eshet aviv lo yigala knaf aviv. So you understand it's referring to a woman who the father didn't marry but actually just slept with outside of marriage, that you also cannot sleep with her. Rabbanan, who disagree, they say, well, if it was truly next to it, then maybe you would have been right. But hashta lo samichle, it's not next to it because there's things interrupting it. There's other psukim in between, like the first pasuk of Loikach, Yeshet Eshet Aviv. And therefore, miboy le'likid anan. In fact, that extra words of Lo Yigalek Knaf Aviv is telling you the halacha of Anan, Damar of Anan, Amar Shmuel, it's b'shomeret yavim shel aviv ha'katuv medaber. It's referring to a shomeret yavim of a father, meaning a son, right, has a father, and the father is a brother, so it's the son of Shimon. Ruvain dies and leaves his wife to Shimon to Yibam. So that woman, if the son of Shimon now goes and sleeps with that woman, that's a lo taseh, Lo Yigalek Knaf Aviv. Because it's not, the father has never slept with her or married her, but the father's supposed to marry her, and there's a zika, and that's considered already his father's relationship. And so therefore, that is added an isser of shomeret yavam, right? Where am I? My knaf aviv, knaf hara'ui la'aviv. It's a person who's supposed to marry his father. Well, says Gemara, lo yigala, you shouldn't sleep with that person. Well, that's fine, but you're not allowed to sleep with the wife of your uncle because that's a prohibition in the Torah. Typically, mishum dodato. It's the son of Shimon cannot sleep with the wife, the widow of Reuven, because it's dodato. That's why you're right, but you get two isurim. Lavor love b'shnei lavin. You get two isurim. I typically mishum yevamah l'shuk. It's like every yevamah. And yevamah is not allowed to sleep with any person outside of her yavam. So of course she can't sleep with him. That's why you're right. Lavor love b'shlosha lavin. You're not. You get three lavim. So basically, a whole bunch of listed them. You know, why would you need a pasuk for extra things? But extra things. The white name, some say it's referring to lachar mitat ach me'av v'lo me'ein. That in fact, what the chiddush of the pasuk of lo yigalek knaf aviv, which tell you that you cannot sleep with shomeret yavim to a father, is a case where basically the father then died. So again, Reuven died, left his widow to Shimon, right? Shimon then died, right? So the question now is can the son of Shimon marry his aunt, right? Because his father's dead, so his father can't do Yibam. His uncle is dead, so she's not married anymore. The Torah is telling you that in fact, you cannot sleep with her because there's a separate prohibition that once she became connected to your father, to Shimon, through Yibam, even though Shimon then died and had never done Yibam, that prohibits him from sleeping with this woman who was connected to his father, Shemeret Yavim, to his father. Okay, we'll stop. That's the end of that Gemara. Now, before we get to our next Mishnah, we have a few, I don't know how you say them, acronyms maybe, where basically they talk about relations that are all pretty inappropriate, I would say, and very far-fetched. I think we've been far-fetched. Now we're about to get very far-fetched. We get so far-fetched that the Gemara actually attributes them to non-Jews. Unlike what we've done till now, right? Reuven, Shimon, the whole thing. Now we start throwing in, Rashi, I think, has a whole bunch of names of Yishmael and all the family of Yishmael, because these are all prohibitions, but they're, cases where basically riddles. Well, let's see what they are. It says the Gemara at the top of Daf, Tzadi Zayin Amud Bet. Tzadi, yeah. Ach me'av, right? Let's say a person, a woman says, you are my brother from my father, but lo me'ein, but not from my mother. V'hu ba'ala de'ein, but you are this man is the husband of my mother. Va'ana barta de'inte, and I am the daughter of his wife, right?
Wait a minute, you have your charts here?
I don't have any charts, but but we'll discuss the case, right? So what is that case, right? So a person, again, let's just do it one at a time, okay? So a woman says, I have a brother from my father, so they share a same father, but they don't share a same mother. And he slept with my mother, who, right, this brother from my father slept with my mother from my father, right? And Anna Barta Diinte, but I am the daughter of his wife, right? Meaning my father and mother got together and had me. My father had another child, my father raped a woman, had a nusa and had me. So my father was never married to my mother. But then my father married a woman or whatever and had another child who's my brother. But according to our Mishnah, that brother can marry my father's anusa, who's my mother, right? So it turns out that he's my brother, he slept with my mother, and I'm the daughter of his wife, which is the same thing as saying he slept with my mother, right? Rami Barchama, look, Rabbi Yehuda Maklita, but that's not like Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says you're not allowed, a man cannot sleep with his father's anusa, which is what had to have happened here in order for it to be her mother. Anyway, so that case is mutar, even according to the Chachamim. The next case is not. What's the next case? Achu, right? A woman says, this guy is my brother. Ubrihu, but he's also my son. And achat achte ana, I am the sister, dehai de darnei akatfaya. This one is riding on my shoulders. Okay, so she's got a little baby, let's say, on her shoulders. And she says, he's my brother and I'm his sister, and he's also my son. How could you find that? That's simple. If you know halacha, right? A man who's non-Jewish, obviously we say goy because it's prohibited by every means, sleeps with his daughter. She has a son. She's carrying the son on her shoulder, and she goes around. I don't know why she's announcing this, but this is my son. He's also my brother, and I'm his sister because they have the same father. Okay, we'll see. We're going to build these up in kind of complexity. Or the next case is a woman says, Shlama lach bri, Shalom Aleichem, my son, bat achtich ana, I am the daughter of your sister. How do you have that? Right. So she says, you're my son. How are you my son? I'm the daughter of your sister. So I'm your niece and your mother. It's straightforward. It's just a person who sleeps with his granddaughter, right? Sleep with the granddaughter. And so then the grandfather is the father of this baby, right? But he's also the father of the baby's mother's mother, right? So he slept with his daughter's daughter. So the woman who had the child is both a granddaughter or a niece, I would say, to this boy and the mother of this boy. Okay, I'm not sure why we're quoting all these.
These are all ariyot, aren't they?
These are definitely. That's why we use goy in all this, right? We don't say, we refer to a non-Jew. Right? Arayot, correct. These are all done things that are done in places that are not, not commonly accepted.
But
or
they're done for non-Jews, they're not ariyot because they're
right. No, correct. You're correct. They're probably not ariyot because they're not Jews. I mean, there's some ariyot that do apply, but maybe these ishadishas are probably the only one. Yeah, no. And part of the reason we're just quoting this, I mean, I'm not exactly sure why we quote this, but there's a whole list of these things. And part of it's just to sort of, attune you to all these different relationships. If you didn't have enough graphs already in Yevamot, we got some more going on. Don't worry, they get more complicated. Says the Gemara, the water drawers, right? The la'im are buckets who draw water in the fields, right? So Rashi sort of explains that this was like the most menial job because, right, you spent all day just filling up water and moving it and carrying water from one place, from the well to the field. So your mind was pretty free, though your body was not. So lipo bechus star pitar. Think about it. Put it inside yourself, like fall into you. This star pitar. Star pitar is a hidden riddle, right? Pitar is a riddle. Star means a hidden thing. So star pitar. What's this riddle that you could be thinking about all day? The high didarene hubar, where a woman says, this one who I'm carrying, meaning this boy who I'm carrying, he is my son. But ana brat achuva, but I'm also the daughter of his brother, right? So you got it? So he says, I am the woman says, the one sitting on I'm carrying is my son, but I'm his daughter. I'm the daughter of his brother. I'm the daughter of his brother. How do you have that case? The same as we just said. Are you talking about where a grandfather, a non-Jew, we don't like this, a Jew wouldn't do this, who slept with his granddaughter? And so therefore, again, just like the case we just said, so therefore basically she is both the mother and a niece of this boy who's sitting on her shoulders, okay? So she's a niece and a mother. What's the next case? Now this one gets more complicated. Bia me'ach. This is a woman who gets up and says, woe from my brother, for my brother. Hu av, he's my brother, but he's also my father. Hu ba'el, but he's also my husband. It doesn't really mean he's my husband, but he slept with me. Hu bar ba'el, he's also the son of my husband. Hu ba'ala de'im, he's also the married or slept with my mother. Va'ana barta de'itite, and I am the daughter of his wife, which is the same thing we just said, right? Ba'ala de'im, slept with my mother, so I'm the daughter of his wife. And lo yahiv pita lachua yakme b'nei barte. He's not giving any bread. He won't support his brothers who are the sons of his daughter. Okay? Make sense? That's the Gemara. What's the case? This talking about a case, it's a little complicated, where a man, a non-Jew, speaking because it's inappropriate, slept with his mother. The holid mimenu bat, and that's the person who's talking. So she is both a brother because they share the same father, right? But she's also the woman talking is also a daughter of this guy, right? And also of the brother. So he's a brother from the father, also a daughter, and obviously the mother is both mother to her and wife to her father, who's her brother. The chazar ubal dobat. But then after the guy sleeps with his mother and has a daughter, that daughter he sleeps with that daughter as well. Sorry, sleeps with his sister who's also his daughter. The chazar ubal dobat. Okay, and then the chazar zakein ubal lev menu banim. And then I'm going to tell you that's the case. Then the grandfather, meaning her brother's father, right? Since her brother is her father, it's her grandfather, sleeps with her, and they have many children. So now there's a whole bunch of children, and if you think about it, this granddaughter now speaking is both talking. The whole thing makes sense, even though it's a little bit unseemly, right? That her brother, because they share a father, is also her father because he fathered her from her mother. Sorry, they don't share a father; they share a mother. They share a father, right? Ultimately, and so he's the father, but then also he slept with her mother. The brother slept with her mother, and we say it's the husband of the mother, but it's not the husband. Obviously, they couldn't marry, but they slept together, and then obviously they slept again, and so she basically has children who are also from his father, right? So her children, since she slept with her grandfather, the grandfather is the father of both the children and her father, and therefore her children are also brothers to her father, and he's not supporting. Anyways, that's that case.
Wouldn't they always be mamzerim? I
They're all
mean,
remember we always say it's non-Jewish here.
no, but forget that. But wouldn't it be all mamzerim?
If they were Jewish, yeah. There's no
So,
mamzerim if you're not. Correct. These are totally inappropriate. Let's finish it because I'm afraid it's going to take too long. On to the at ache. Another final two more. A woman says to a man, "You and I are siblings, right? We're brothers and sisters. However, ana v'avuch ache, me and your father are also brothers, and ana v'imech ache, and me and your mother are also, siblings. How do you find that? Mishkachin labegoy abal imo, right? Let's say it's actually a pretty straightforward case. A guy sleeps with his mother. They have two daughters. Okay, so he sleeps with his mother, and they have two daughters who are both his daughters and his sisters, right? And then he sleeps with Chazar Baal Chatmehem, and then he sleeps with one of the daughters, who's also his sister, and has a child, a son. And now, Karyale Achten Ime, she is now talking to the sister of the mother. And the Karale Hachin, this is what she says to them. That basically, you and I share a mother. You and me and your father share a mother, and me and your mother share a father. So all the cases come together. And the final case is Anna Va'at B'nei Ache. You and I are B'nei Ache, we're the sons of brothers, which is what we call cousins, right? A woman says to another person, you and I are the sons of brothers. But also, Anna Va'avuch B'nei Ache, I and your father are cousins, and Anna V'imech B'nei Ache, and I and your mother are cousins. In this case, in fact, you can find it without any non-Jews. You can find this case in a regular heter family where they marry a lot of each other, which is you go in Ruvain, again, you have three brothers, right? Ruvain, Shimon, Levi. Ruvain yesh lo shtei banot. And Ata Shimon v'nasav chad minayav, Ata bar Levi v'nasav chad minayav. What happens is Ruvain has two daughters. Shimon, his brother, marries one, which is totally permitted, right? He married his niece. And then Levi married someone else and had a son. And Levi's son married the other daughter, right? So Levi married, I don't remember what the relationship is, but Levi married Ruvain's daughter, who's his, it's not his aunt exactly, but it's a cousin in some way, but it's above him, right? She's a generation above him. But that's totally permitted. And so Levi married one daughter of Ruvain. Shimon, his uncle, Levi's son, married one daughter of Ruvain. Shimon, his uncle, married another daughter of Ruvain. And Kamerle braid to Shimon, the bar braid to Levi. And now the son of Shimon says to this grandson of Levi this statement, which is that our fathers, meaning, you and I are cousins because our mothers are sisters, right? And me and your father are cousins because I am married to, because our, sorry, me and your father, because our fathers are Shimon and Levi, right? Our brothers, so we're cousins. And I and your mother are cousins because both of them are both me and your mother had the same brothers of fathers, sorry, Ruvain and Shimon. So they all go together. Because your mother has Ruvain, my father is Shimon, and so we're basically all cousins. Okay, that one actually makes a lot of sense, but we're gonna leave it there because we got more daf to do in only 18 minutes. Says the next Mishnah, Hagioret. Let's say you have a woman who converts. Shenit Gaira b'na ima. Her child converts with her. We're going to see in the Gemara when exactly he converted with her. Was she pregnant? Was she not pregnant? So, anyways, a woman converts and her son converts with her. That son, right? If they have other children, sorry, they many children when it's gayer, and then one of them gets married, and then he dies without children. His brother is choletz lo miyabim, right? Because of, they can't do yibam because they're not really brothers, right? Min ha av, right? Because they're converted. Says the Mishnah, afilo horato shel rishon shelo b'kedusha, even if the first brother was conceived when she was non-Jewish, she converted while she was pregnant, and therefore leidato b'kedusha, he was born when she was already Jewish, and then after she converted, she had a second son, Sheni horato leidato b'kedusha. Everything, he was totally Jewish, 100%, right, in conception and in birth. Then even in that case, you can't do, well, we think it means you can't do yibum, okay? And similar, the same thing is true about a woman who's a slave who was freed and her children were freed with her. They are not able to do yibam because they're not considered to be brothers from the father. Now, says the Gemara, Yudan amta ishtachro. The sons of Yudan, who was an amma, who was a slave, were freed, right? And even though these two men who were brothers, right, were freed, they're not brothers anymore. So Rav Acha bar Yaakov said that if one of them died, or even didn't die, they got divorced, sorry, the other brother can marry his brother's wife, even though Achot Isha Eshet is prohibited. They're not considered to be brothers. Normally, Rava said, Rava, Baharav Sheshet Asar. Sheshet said that was prohibited. Well, I said, okay, I don't care. Who Asar? He said, no. I said, yes, I think it's permitted to marry if you've been converted or freed. And even though they're brothers and they're married, there's no achva there. There's no brotherhood. And therefore, if one divorces his wife, the other one can marry that. It's not achot eshet achza. Now, says the word, let's clarify. Mina avalo mina ein. Let's say they are brothers, they share a father, but they don't share a mother, right? So then, kuli amalo pligi d'shari. Remember, as we said, we don't consider there to really be any relationship to the father once they're converted, right? Or even before, but certainly once they're converted. And so therefore, they don't have the same mother, right? They both converted, then clearly, or they both were freed, they're not connected, they're not brothers in any way, even though they have the same father. But he was not Jewish, and therefore it doesn't go with them. So everyone agrees that they can marry each other's wives. Min ha'ein v'lo min ha'av. If they share a mother, but not a father, says the Gemara, kuli amal lo pligi da'asir. In fact, everyone agrees that would be prohibited for them to marry because the Isser of Eshet Ach applies whether you share a mother or share a father. And since they share a mother, it will be prohibited. Where do we argue? Kipligi min ha'av u'min ha'ein. If they share both a mother and a father, now why would that be? If they share a mother, it's prohibited. Why if they share a mother and a father would be permitted? Because, interestingly, Man Disharei, the one who says it's permitted, says because people generally think of you as related to your father. But they're Abba Shadinan, because we use last names as Habbenei Palnai Karale. They call you son of whatever, son of Joe, right? And so therefore, even though you share a mother, no one focuses on that. They focus on the fact that you share a father. And everybody understands, this is how Rashi understands it, that everybody understands that when you convert or you're freed, you don't have any connection to your father anymore, right? Now, one reason that might be the case, we discussed, and we'll discuss this more tomorrow, is because we don't trust anyone knows who their father is, right? Because we assume, whether you should assume this or not, is that non-Jews don't have fidelity in their marriages. So presumably, the man who they think is their father is not really their father. And therefore, once they convert, we don't actually think they're brothers. So since people focus on the father, they're not going to be thinking, oh, they're brothers from the mother, and therefore we're allowing brothers to marry each other's wives. And so it would be permitted because they're married, they have a relationship from the father. And Rav Sheshet would say to you, no. Karlei, nami b'nei ploni. People also talk about your mother. And therefore, although again, midoraita, gershon's gayer katan shenolad dami. But people don't realize that, don't always know that. And they might come to say, oh my gosh, you can sleep with your brother's wife, and therefore we prohibited it. Some say the opposite. Ikadamar, and in fact, Rav Bar Yaakov even argues by Achim min ha'im. Even if they're brothers only from the mother, they would be permitted to marry each other's wives. Everybody knows the principle that when you convert, you are newborn, and therefore the connections that you had genetically previously no longer limit you, and you can have a relationship with someone who was your brother's wife. Now, it's not. Let's try to prove this from our Mishnah. What does our Mishnah say? A woman who is a convert, right, who converts with her sons, says the Mishnah, lo chotzim v'lo miyabnim. They don't do chalitza and they don't do yibum, right? That's what our Mishnah says. They don't do chalitza and they don't do yibum. No, that's not exactly what our Mishnah said, right? Our Mishnah didn't say that. What did our Mishnah said? The Mishnah said, chotzim v'lo miyabnim. But obviously our Mishnah we're going to see was a different case. So sorry, this is the following case, right? The next where it says, and we're going to discuss the difference between them. Here it says that if she's nitgayer and her children are nitgayer with her, they don't do chalitza and they don't do yibum. Now, why not? My time. It must be because mishum da'asiri. It must be that they don't do chalitza or yibum because since they are brothers, right? They don't have the same father. Remember, we don't assume that their father is connected, so they're not allowed. Remember, yibum is only a requirement if the brothers share a father. Here they are not assumed to share a father because they're converts, right? But they have a mother. And so maybe the Mishnah is saying, well, since they have a mother, that they share their brothers. And therefore, they can't sleep with each other's wives. And if one of them dies, the other brother cannot sleep with his wife. But there's no mitzvah of yibum because they don't share a father. So that's my time, that they're not allowed to sleep with them. Well, no, not necessarily. It might be that they don't have to do it, right? There's no relationship. That basically it's saying, no, there's no chalitza or yibum because they're not considered brothers. And so there's no brother for the woman to fall to, but so she's permitted to marry anybody, but inunami shari, she can even marry this guy who is her husband's brother because they're not considered to be brothers because of conversion. There's only 1 second. Right, our Mishnah didn't say, what did our Mishnah say? And if you continue going in our Mishnah, sorry, I'm going back. Afilo horato shel rishon shelo b'kedusha. Even if the hora, the conception was shelo b'kedusha. How do you understand that? If you say that what the Mishnah is saying is you can't do chalitza and yibum, meaning it's usher to do chalitza and yibum. I know diktani afilo. What it's saying, even, meaning afal gav, I mean the whole Gemara now, afal gav the rishon, even though the first son, horato shelo b'kedusha, v'leidato b'kedusha, he was conceived when she was not Jewish, so he was not connected to her Judaism, but he was born when she was Jewish. But the second one, was born after she was converted, and therefore it's kishtei imahotam. It's as if there are two mothers, right? Because one mother was non-Jewish, and one mother, same woman, but one was when she was non-Jewish, one was when she was Jewish. Then afilu hachi asiri. Even then, the fact is that because he was born after she converted, they're connected, they're brothers, and therefore you cannot sleep with the brother's widow. So that's a chiddush. But if you say that the Mishnah is saying they're permitted, then what's afilu? What's even if it was conceived when it was non-Jewish? What would be the chiddush there? That's where no. The chiddush is afal gav the tervayoli the tambiktusha. Even though they were both born when she was Jewish, and ati v'chlufe b'Yisrael, there might be a time where people confuse them with two brothers who are completely Jewish, who can obviously not marry a brother's widow. In this case, they're permitted, so there's no chiddush there. And Ikadami, some actually try to prove our Mishnah the opposite way. And Alchanami mistaver deshari, that you can prove from our Mishnah that it's permitted. Because our Mishnah says even. And if you say that what the Mishnah is saying is don't do chalitza or yibam, meaning don't do anything because they're not brothers, then the chiddush would be even though they're both born, even though both brothers they were both born after she converted. It might confuse them with two born Jewish brothers. Right? If you're saying that they're prohibited, then what are you adding by the word afilo? This is what we said in the beginning. Even though the answer is even though the first one was conceived when she was not converted yet, and was born after she converted, but the second one was born and conceived, or conceived and born b'kedusha. The kishtei imahot dami, that the mother was in different statuses. According to Rav Huna, that would be telling you that even then, Rav, Rav Sheshet, sorry. Even then, they would both be prohibited. And so basically, our Mishnah cannot prove one way or the other. So we have a machloket about how you view this, whether Yibam is allowed, it's not Yibam, whether sleeping with Eshet Achiv, who's converted, would be allowed, or whether it would be totally prohibited. Tashma. Now let's do a few more. We'll do one more Braita. Let's try to prove it from the following Braita. What does the Braita say? Shnei Achim Tu'umim Gerim. This gets a little bit more complex because they're twins, right? So presumably twins come from the same father, right? That's what you have to assume. Now, it's not 100%. They're not identical twins. I guess it's somewhat conceivable that two men slept with one woman and they both conceived at the same cycle. We assume that that's, I don't know, I don't actually know if it's possible. I think
No,
it's not? Okay. But we assume that it's possible, but very far-fetched. Okay. Very far-fetched, but not inconceivable. So anyways, that's the case. Shnei Achim Tu'umim Gerim. They're two brothers who are twins who are converted, right? So they were born not Jewish, but they converted. Or Mishucharim, or they were free. They were born as slaves and they were free. Says the Mishnah, says the Braita, sorry, Lo Chotzim Lo Miyamdim. They don't do Chalitza or Yibam, but Ein Chayavim Mishum Eshedach. There's no Chayav Mishum Eshedach because they are not considered to be brothers. Even though they're twins, once you convert, Ger Shein Tkayer, Katan Shal Adam. Okay? That's the Braita. Continues the Braita, Haida Horatan Shelo B'Kedusha, Leidatam B'Kedusha. If they are conceived by a mother when she was not Jewish, but when she converted prior to them being born, or she was freed prior to them being born, so they were born B'Kedusha, then Lo Chotzim Lo Miyamim. They still don't do Chalitza or Yibam because we assume they don't share the same father, even though they're twins. We assume that they can't do Chalitza or Yibam because they don't share the same father. Aval Chayavim Mishum Eshedach. But then you are Chayav Mishum Eshedach because they share the same mother and they were born when she was Jewish. So they're considered to be brothers, right? And therefore the wife would be prohibited. So these are Achim Min Ha'im. Continues the Braita. If they were conceived and born when she was already B'Kedusha, then Harim Kisrein L'chol Devreim, which of course is not a big Kiddush, but it's important to state that once she converts, obviously her children are Jewish like every other Jewish child, right? Says the Gemara, what's the proof in the Braita? It does say in the Braita, Ein Chayavim Mishum Eshedach. There's no Chiyav of Eshedach. What does that imply? That there's no Chiyav, right? Ein Chiyuv Aleka. There's no Isser Midoraita Ha Isura Ika. But if you go to the top of Daf Tzavichet, there's an Isser, implying there is an Isser D'Rabbanan, like we said before, that you'd be making Gzera because people don't realize and they call them brothers. So implying that there is an Isser from this Braita, because it just says in Chayavim, which implies you're not Chayim in Torah, but you're not supposed to do it. Says the Gemara, Rav Sheshet would say to you, no, sorry, Ravacha would say to you, same thing, there's not even an Isser. I need to buy the Mitli Seifa of Chayavim. Remember, the end part of the Braita does say that if they're born after she converts, then you are Chayav. So because there we have to say Chayavim, Ketan Nami Reisha Ein Chayavim. So therefore we parallel that by saying Ein Chayavim. But it does not mean, says Rav Acha, does not mean that you are Asur. According to me, you would be even permitted when they're twins to sleep with their wives. Okay? Tomorrow we'll discuss this question of twins, which is, if they're really twins, why do you assume they don't have the same father? Right? Because it should be that they should, even though they're converted, but again, the assumption is that we don't know who their father is going to be, right? But the question is, if you convert and they're twins, why doesn't that prohibit it as well? And we'll discuss, obviously, there's additional details.
she's converting while she's pregnant. Is that
Correct?
the
That's the middle case, yeah.
And if she does that, the babies are Jewish.
They're not, but they're midrabanan basically. They're Jewish min ha'im and amna'am.
Right.
They're achim. They're Jewish. They are Jewish. Sorry, let me rephrase that. If she converts, the kids are Jewish.
Well, she's pregnant.
When she's pregnant, but they're not brothers min ha'am. They're not considered to have the same father.
Yeah, right. Because of this principle.
Right. Well, we'll discuss more tomorrow.
Right. Okay.
Okay, wow. Everyone, have a good day.
You too. Thank
have
you.
A great trip.
Thank you.
Maybe we'll see you next Sunday morning.
Okay.
Okay.
Shavua Tov.
Shavua Tov. So I sent you the chart from Hadran for like the second part of when he was talking about all the relations with like the goyim. So it's super complicated.
Must have lines all over the place.
I know, right? It's crazy. I'm thinking that at that point of time, these guys didn't even like, keep track of who was whom,
I think they're just riddles. I mean, I don't. I think that rabbis are just having fun there.
Maybe,
I
maybe.
mean, that's what Rashi kind of like the chidot.
Yeah,
So I mean, but maybe. I mean, who knows? Yeah.
yeah.
I
Irrelevant.
hopefully. I mean, there are like students that I have. They almost never have the same parents. Like they have brother.
Same with Talia. Same. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's not only like the names are different, but there is a lot of. I mean, it's not as crazy as this, but there
Yeah,
is
yeah,
a
yeah.
lot
There's
of,
like, there's a mother back home or there's a father back home with another
right,
two kids. And like, so
right,
obviously that person is remarried or has another relation with
right,
somebody else and has
right,
other
right.
kids.
So the family trees,
Yeah,
would be very complex,
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, no, and so it's not completely far-fetched because they kind of know who they're
No,
related to,
I'm
but
not saying it's far-fetched. I'm just saying that at that point of time, they all like having fun with each other. They don't even keep track of who is whom. That's what I'm
right,
saying. It's like it
right,
doesn't matter anymore to them. So, and
right.
like us.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, although you have to assume that they're not sleeping with their, well, I mean, I don't know, granddaughter.
I don't even want to think about it. It's too much for me. I'm
No,
sorry.
I got it. I got it. So where are you? You're staying with your parents?
Yeah.
Where do they live?
They live in Yerushalayim. They're in like Arnona.
Oh, okay. That's where my cousin lives.
Oh, okay.
What street?
They are on, you think I remember?
I don't know. Yeah.
Let's see. I mean, I can visualize, but above and
Yeah.
beyond that, they are on Hanoch Albek.
Okay.
It's like Hanoch Albek is like crossing Betar, and it's like one up from Derech Hebron.
Right. Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. My cousin lives in Beitar. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's like, that's the corner. So,
Yeah.
right.
Okay. It's nice. Yeah. It's nice there.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Nasiya Tova.
Thank you so much.
Okay. I'll let you
Sounds
know. I'm hoping to get to Israel this summer, so
Oh, great.
from there I'll let you
Okay,
know.
so if you're around and I'm around at the same time, then,
Exactly. Okay.
Okay.
Take care. All right.
Bye,
Bye.
Hanan.